Rev up your engines!
Well, I'll tell you, here's what happened was, car gets old, you gotta replace things, right? Well, in the case of people, you get old, the same thing happens to people too. And in my case, for years, I could barely see. This is no lens. This is the lens that came out of here. See how thick it is? Well, I could barely see. As you age, the lens in your eye gets what's called cataracts. The proteins start to clump together and break down as you age once you get over 40 and almost twice that. And then you start to get blurred vision, you can't see. I just had this eye fixed at the Wang Laser Institute in Nashville. They really do a good job, right? So now I can see perfectly well with this eye without using this stupid lens. Now, the right eye is going to be done in another 2 weeks. So hopefully I will be back to normal in 2 weeks. As it stands now, you can see I'm actually the reincarnation of J. Frank Parnell from Repo Man. But I shall switch to my special glasses for the rest of this show. There, now I don't look so totally insane. These are ones that are made just for driving around when you had these operations done. Well, now the Nissan CEO is saying we might have to move more factories out of Mexico into the United States because of tariffs that old Donald Trump's planning. Now, maybe some of the stuff will actually work. For the last few decades, companies have been moving south of the border. Toyota makes all their Tacomas now down in Mexico. They used to make them in San Antonio. Now they make them all in Mexico. GM's moved production down there. Ford's moving production down there. Stellantis has moved production down there. Ram has moved production down there. Hey, maybe it's a good thing. They start moving back to the United States and giving jobs to Americans. Now, who knows what's actually going to happen, you know? A lot of stuff. There's a lot of money involved in those factories they built in Mexico, and I can't see them let go anytime soon. And maybe they'll try to cut deals in Washington about, oh, well, we'll build more in the United States in the future, right? In the future, and then, you know, Trump's gone in 4 years. You can't be reelected this time, so who knows what will actually happen, because what these companies promise and what they actually do are often two completely different things. And of course, Nissan will say anything. They're always on the verge of bankruptcy, so they want people to like what they say to cut them better deals. And we'll see what happens, though. It'd be great if the jobs came back from Mexico. I don't know, though. It'd be a tough sell. Well, if you own a Silverado, a Tahoe, or a Suburban, you might be surprised at how you can turn off that stupid cylinder deactivation. Like you got a V8, and then at certain speeds, certain torque requirements will shut off some of the cylinders, and as I've told over and over again, it leads to engine problems from thermal mismanagement. You got a V8 engine, it should all be the same temperature inside from the firing, and then the cooling jets from the cooling system, the water going through all the cooling jackets, that cools the engine so it's the same temperature all through. Well, if you got a hot cylinder, a cold cylinder, a hot cylinder next to a cold cylinder, then it's going to make the engines warp, which pretty much engineers have showed me does happen, maybe by only a few thousandths of an inch, but it makes them run bad. Look at all the engines that are going out on GMs, these V8 engines, right? Well, there's a trick if you own one that you can disable it, and it's this. Use the paddle shifters and only go to 9th gear, because it's set up that if you're in D9, it disables both the stop-start feature and the cylinder deactivation. It's a 10-speed transmission, but if you shift it manually, leave it in 9, it will not deactivate the engine, and you will not get that wear and tear. GM's fighting it tooth and nail saying, oh, cylinder deactivation, it doesn't harm the engine. Well, of course it does over time. You can't have hot, cold, hot cylinders. It's going to make them warp because the hot side's going to expand, the colder side's going to shrink. It wasn't designed for that. They can't make metal that can take hot, cold, hot on the same piece. It just doesn't work that way. And GM lies about it. Honda's got the same problem. I see it all the time in their V6s that have that cylinder deactivation. As they age, they start burning oil because of the warpage. Then the piston rings don't seat right, and then they burn oil, which Honda's never used to do, but a lot of them do now. And a lot of people will deactivate the Hondas. Well, now you know, if you're driving one of those GM products, you can shift it with the paddle shifter, shift it into D9, and then it disables the system. Some interesting information for you people out there, so you don't destroy your vehicles. Well, I warn you not to buy Jeep products. Well, here's a guy with a Jeep Wagoneer, and the rear view camera doesn't work, and here is Jeep's fix. As you can see in the picture, he has to take the entire inside of that Wagoneer apart. All that has to be taken apart because he has to do a whole new wiring harness of the thing. And the mechanic himself is saying, whoa, Stellantis is making us pull the whole thing apart to fix the camera that doesn't work. Now, these things start at $74,000, people. Due to the recall, they got to take all that apart. And you can imagine, you take all that apart, hey, things are going to break. Plastic snap-on parts are going to break. Seats might get damaged, right? I mean, this just shows you the horrendous quality control of Jeep. And yet, what does Jeep think? They think by running an ad in the Super Bowl with a washed-up, ham-fisted actor is going to bring their Jeep sales back. No, maybe make them correctly instead. Wouldn't that make sense? Well, here's a warning if you're buying a car. Read the fine print. A man bought a 2024 Toyota RAV4 at a Toyota dealer. It's bad enough that he had to pay $63,000 for it. $63,000, right? Toyota opened a credit card in his name to pay an additional $1,500 deposit. Can you imagine? You find out, well, I paid $63,000 for this car. It's bad enough they gave him a 14% interest rate on the loan. Turns out some of the paperwork made him put down an extra payment of $1,500, and they gave him a Toyota credit card for financing the $1,500 down payment. The dealership opened a credit card in his name. Now, he admitted when he had the paperwork read by somebody that it said that he was allowing them to open up this credit card and charge $1,500 for a down payment. It's kind of bizarre. He didn't have the $1,500 down payment, so Toyota, in effect, opened a credit card for him and then charged the $1,500 on that, so now he's paying on that credit card too, which he didn't know until he got the bill. The guy admits, his name's Diaz, he said he looked to it and there was a form that said he allowed them to open this credit card up for $15 and charge $1,500 for an extra down payment. He even hired a lawyer to look at it. The lawyer said, no, that's a legal contract. You signed it. This is what I tell people. Don't sign a darn thing till you have a lawyer look at it, or bring a friend who understands cars, who's going to read it and say, here's what you're paying for, here's what you're getting, right? I mean, I tell you can't trust these people. Well, they did a study this year, and they said that Americans don't trust dealerships in their pricing of buying a car, what you're actually going to pay. 76% of us, right? That's over 3/4. So, before you sign anything, you got a lawyer friend or somebody like me that knows cars, bring them along. Or just get the contract. Say, email me the contract. I'll email it to my lawyer. He'll read it. So you'll know exactly what you're doing. Well, it looks like Hyundai and Kia electric vehicles are going to regain the $7,500 tax credit. Now you think, wow, it's a Korean company. But they just opened a new factory in Georgia, in the United States. So, not a big fan of EVs, but it could be that Trump's practice is starting to reap some rewards. That they're like, hey, okay, we're going to build the plants in the United States. Korean company, right? But they're making this factory in the United States. They say they're going to get the $7,500 tax credit. So, they won't get any kind of tariff put on them, but they weren't putting a tariff on the Korean stuff anyway. We had a big deal going with Korea. We had all those troops still over there since the Korean War. And they say they're going to be mass producing the Ioniq 5 now in Georgia, making stuff in the United States. Hey, maybe some of the stuff is working, that they'll start Korean manufacturing in the United States. I mean, Toyota and Honda weren't stupid. Honda's been making Accords for like 30 years or something in Ohio, and Toyota's been manufacturing cars in the United States for just about as long. Toyota and Honda were smarter companies. They weren't forced into it by law. They were smart businessmen and said, hey, if we build the cars there, no one's going to complain. They did the same thing in England. Toyota, Honda, they're building cars there because they knew, well, the English will put a tax on it, but if we build them in that country, they're smarter businessmen. That's just what it comes down to. And maybe the Hyundai guys are starting to wise up. Well, Trump's broadside against the wind industry for the wind turbines is now threatening projects that could power millions of homes on the East Coast. Now, I've railed against that for years because, hey, I've got a place in Rhode Island and they have windmills there that they've lost small fortunes in. They break, they build them up, they don't create that much electricity. Then they started to build them between Rhode Island and Massachusetts near Cape Cod. And as soon as they started putting them up, one of the blades broke and they had to shut beaches down, and then they had to stop even building them for a while because they were saying, hey, what's happening here? What's going on? right? So now Trump is saying, nix on that stuff. And now they're all saying, oh, you won't have enough electricity. There are better ways of doing it, people. Regular nukes work fine. They're working on another new nuke here in Tennessee because they realize people need a lot of electricity and they want something that is dependable and that can last for a really long time. And windmills aren't the way. I got to agree with Trump on this one. I mean, it's a waste of a lot of money, a lot of space. It doesn't last long. Don't keep putting good money after bad. They found out these things break. They don't last. They don't create that much electricity. They cost too much money. And then they're in salt water, people, right? Windmills, at least on land, are easy to get to. They don't have salt water corroding them, and they will last longer than the ones in the salt water. The salt water ones all broke. They had nothing but problems. I've watched programs on the blades get eroded by the salt mist in the air, the leading edge. The salt eats them up. That doesn't happen on land, but it happens when they're in salt water, right? So, hey, I kind of agree with this one. They can whine all they want that, oh, it's a bad thing. No, it's a good thing that they can find something else and not waste all the money and all the time building these things that won't last all that long. And who pays for it? Us, the taxpayers. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.